Today I want you all to make sure that you bring the energy. I'm here to expand your mind. Today I'm hoping that you shine. I'm not just another adult that's here to demand. I'm here to give you some information to make your brain expand. It's a bar. Today we're going to talk about, hold on. Today we're going to talk about how we make decisions, why some people win and some people fail in their mission. So if you have a question, all that I ask is that you use your intelligence, choose what's relevant. And if I have a question, I'm going to ask for a volunteer. Someone raise their hand, make it clear. Do not be hesitant. So this will be your opportunity to shine and show that you've expanded your mind. So if you're ready and you already agreed, I want you to raise your hand and let me know that you're ready to proceed. Let me see those hands raised. If you're ready to proceed, let's raise those hands. Good deal. So let's get it going. So as a question though, I'll wait. Now, one question I always ask myself this is, why am I here? Today I'm here to give you as much information as I can. As I explained to you all before, during my senior year in high school, I ended up going on a different type of trip where I ended up getting arrested during my senior year. That being said, I made some decisions that allowed me to expand and elevate, and I believe that that information is critical. So I'm here to share with you all some ideas specifically today. Now, because I believe this information is so valuable, and I know for a fact if you choose to listen, it can not only change your life, but you can use this information to help the lives of your family as well as your community. That's how serious I think this is today. So because of that, one thing I know, sometimes students may not be in the place to hear it, and they may not be in the place to listen. If that's you today, then you can raise your hand, and one of the teachers will kindly walk you out so that you're not a distraction to everyone else. Because there are some people in here I know for a fact they're going to get this information, and they're going to implement it, and it's going to change their lives. So if that's you today, if you find that that's you, you can't stop being distracting, raise your hand, they'll walk you out. Or if we identify that you're a person that can't hold it together for whatever reason, because you may be dealing with something at home, one of the teachers will politely tap you on your shoulder, you'll just gently walk out, and when you're ready to come back and participate, come on in. Can we agree to that, yes or yes? Yes. Can we agree to that, yes or yes? Yes. That being said, good deal. Now, I have a question for you all. Raise your hand if you remember the last time I was here, we talked about a decision-making model. Decision-making, let's see. Okay, some of us, put our hands down. Raise your hand if you remember us talking about the concept of seeing through the fog and seeing things a lot more clear. You may not remember the specific language, but you remember the concept. Raise your hand. Okay, some of us, a little bit less. Okay, good deal. Put your hands down. Raise your hand if you remember us talking about responding to situations instead of simply reacting to them. Raise your hand. Let me see. Okay, I love it. I love it. Now, let me tell you the truth. I've spoken to thousands of different audiences, and I get very similar responses to what you all just gave. I never expect students to remember everything that I say, because that's not how language works, and that's not how learning works. Learning isn't going to work by me simply coming in once and you all just memorizing it automatically. But what I have found is that the more and more I speak, some of you are going to start to infuse it in your unconscious mind, and it's going to become conscious, and you're going to start making better decisions. Some of you are going to be able to see situations where you're not just going to simply react to a situation, you're going to respond appropriately, and you're not going to need an adult to tell you what to do. So the more and more we get this information, the more and more you're going to remember. I don't need you to remember what every single letter stands for and what it means, but you're going to generally remember the concepts and generally improve. Now, raise your hand if you remember us talking about the concept of the thermostat versus the thermometer. Let me see some hands. Let me get a volunteer. Let me get a volunteer to talk about what do you remember. This young lady in the back. Can you give her the mic, please? Good deal. Talk to me. Talk to me about the thermostat versus the thermometer.
That the thermostat can change and the thermometer is like basically how the room of the temperature is.
I love it. She said the thermostat. Give her a round of applause for that. So, She ate. So she said the thermostat controls the temperature, and the thermostat simply responds to the temperature. Now, I know you all are scholars. I'm going to see something if you all noticed it. When she raised her hand and started communicating, what did some people do in the room? Talk to me. What did some people do? Some people looked at her. What else? Right here. Some people laughed, right? Some people laughed. And she had an opportunity. She had an opportunity to either operate like a thermostat or a thermometer. A thermometer would have responded and reacted based upon what the audience did. The people who laughed, if she was operating like a thermometer, she would have probably shut up or responded back with negativity. But she responded like a thermostat. She held it together and she controlled the space. So give her a round of applause for that. Now, all the information that I'm going to give you today is going to be so that you can respond like a thermostat in your lives. You're going to be able to understand what other people are thinking, how they're operating, and it's specifically going to be based upon the language that you use. Now, the last time we was here, we talked about the clear model thinking, how we see people shapes how we treat people. I gave you all a model to clear up some of the fog. And let's kind of review that right now. The strategy to be clear, it starts with first, you must check your first thoughts. Whenever something happened, you check your first thoughts, you pause and notice what your mind did first. Let me get a volunteer in the audience to talk to me about what does it mean to check your first thoughts and to center yourself. We're going to go right here.
So like you can think about like what you're gonna say first, or like how you're gonna respond.
That's strong. So she said, that's strong right there. Give us some claps. Think about what you're going to say first and how you're going to respond, right? There have been times where someone has operated with some level of negativity. The first thing I have to do is center myself. I have to realize, okay, I don't like that. I might be a little bit upset. Let me center myself. So that's exactly what you have to do. And then you have to start pause and notice what your mind did first. But don't be a prisoner to what it did first. The next thing is to listen to understand. Pay attention to what's really being said or felt. Let me get a volunteer to break that down for me. What does it mean to listen to understand? We're going to go right here. We have a new volunteer right there. Let's talk to me. What does it mean to listen to understand?
Listen to understand is when you listen and participate and get a better understanding of what's happening.
Strong. Give her a round of applause. That's strong, right? Listen to understand, right? Participate. I love that, right? So first you center yourself, even if you're upset, even if you're angry. You don't have to respond based on the anger. Now it's, okay, let me see what's going on. Let me check the environment. Let me listen for understanding. The next thing is to empathize before you evaluate. Try to see how the other person might feel and how it landed. Let me get someone to talk about that. Let's talk about the empathy. What does it mean to empathize before you evaluate? Let me get a volunteer from one of my scholars. Is that hand up? I think you got it. You got it? Let me see who has it. I know we got somebody who got it. Go, we got it coming back. Talk to me again.
I think it means like empathy.
Yes, yeah. So what does empathy mean to you? What do you think that means?
Empathy means like when somebody's feeling down, you can connect to their feelings.
Exactly that. When someone is feeling down, you can connect to their feelings. Now, let me ask you a question. We're going to go deeper. Do you think that you have to agree with them in order to connect to the feeling? You don't have to agree, but it's just empathizing. I can understand where you're coming from. Sometimes things are going to happen in your life where someone may do something that you don't necessarily like or agree with. And you don't have to agree with it, but you can still empathize with the underlying reason for why they did it. Next is ask questions, be curious, clarify instead of assuming. Let me hear from you all. Talk to me. What does it mean to ask questions and get clarity instead of assuming? We're going to go right here again.
I think it means to ask them if
You got it?
clarify. Because some people assume more than they think.
So some people assume more than they think. Some people make assumptions, and asking questions instead of assuming is part of the process. Let me ask you a question. Have someone ever assumed something about you that was incorrect? Absolutely. I just saw your hand up. Talk to me. What do you want to say?
Try to talk to the person like if you think they was talking about you, with like if they really wasn't, you just heard it from other people. Like try to talk to that person to see if it's actually true or not.
Absolutely, right? Sometimes you might hear that somebody's talking about you. But as opposed to assuming it's true, go and have the conversation. Now, if we went a little bit deeper into asking that question, let me ask from you, hear from you all. Is the way that I ask a question, does that matter?
No, or yes.
You say, yeah, right? Why does that matter? The way that I ask a question, why does that matter? Talk to me. Why does it matter? You got it? Why does it matter?
Stop laughing, boy. Well, it matters.
Get that mic, please.
Nah.
We're going to come back. So,
Hey, come back.
let me help you out. Let me ask you. I'm going to do it in real time. So, if I say, why are you sitting here? That's a question, right? Is that a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it's aggressive question. So the way that I ask the question, do you think it matters?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now tell me why it matters.
Because it's the tone in your voice.
The tone in my voice matters, right? You got something to say, talk to me. We'll wait. We'll wait. I want to hear from these young people in the back. Hold on, we'll wait. All right, go ahead. Thank you.
If you ask them in a rude way, I feel like they're gonna start arguing with you, and it'll end up to a bigger situation.
Absolutely. Raise your hand if that's ever happened before. Someone asked you questions, but they asked it in a rude way, it led to an argument. That's critical, right? It's the reason why sometimes we, even as young people, end up in arguments that may not necessarily be something that we have to do. Because of the way that an adult may ask you the question, the way that you may ask a question as well. Last but not least, the R stands for reflect and respond with intention. Reflect and respond with intention. What does that mean? To reflect and respond with intention. Get a volunteer here. Talk to me. Yeah, hey, I see you thinking something. You over there. You thinking. You want to volunteer? What does it mean to reflect and respond with intention? To choose what you want to do next. What does that mean?
To make a decision if you're gonna really make the right choice.
To make that decision, think about it so that you're making the right choice. Sometimes the people around us may be influencing us to go in a different direction, and we're just responding out of habit. Somebody laughs, and then we gotta laugh. Some people point, and now we gotta point, right? As opposed to doing that, sometimes we should reflect and respond with intention. Now, the last time I was here, we talked about the communication continuum. We walked through the process of how we first start out in the place of unawareness, and then through our perceptions, through seeing each other, through hearing, through an experience, we get to awareness. Through engagement, the conversations, the observations that we make, we end up getting to knowledge. And a lot of people end up stopping at knowledge. Let me hear from you all. Did any of you remember why it's a problem when you just stop at knowledge and just make your decision based on the knowledge you get? We're going to go with somebody, anyone new? No, we're going to go with you, right here. We're going to go back here. Right there, talk to me. If you remember, what's the problem with just stopping at knowledge? Any of those three in the back, talk to me.
Okay, so the problem is like if you only go off the knowledge, you might like think wrong about that person basically, and like they might turn out to be like a good person or whatever. And yeah.
I love that answer. I love that, right? And she's perfectly right. Sometimes when we just work off the data or the knowledge that we have, sometimes we can end up drawing the wrong conclusion, and it can inform how I respond to situations without intention. For example, we talked about this before. Raise your hand if you've ever cursed out a teacher. Raise your hand. Raise your hand high. Let me see. Okay, hold on. Okay.
Like fully cussed out?
Yeah, fully cussed out. All right, put your hands down. Now put your hands down, right? So now I have data. I have knowledge. I know who did it. Even though it's not a lot, I know the students who cursed out teachers before. So now my question is, what conclusion am I going to draw based upon that information? What conclusion can I come up with? That's it.
Like not a bad person, but like if it happens multiple times, then that'll show like their true character or whatever. Then yeah.
I could assume that they're a bad person and that's their true character. Talk to me over here. Hold on, wait for the mic.
Basically, we could go based off their character and the character traits and you might think bad about it, like she said, but basically it's called assuming.
I could be assuming. I love how you dived into that. So now, raise your hand if you've cursed out a teacher. Raise your hand again. Okay. Can I get one volunteer? Is there someone who remembers that time clearly? You remember? You remember? You remember? Let's go talk to her real quick. Okay, so the time that you cursed out a teacher, what happened?
So I was in like it was in fourth grade, I think.
Fourth
I'm
grade,
pretty sure.
got it.
And this kid wouldn't give back my book, so I got mad. And the teacher kept on going on his side. So I was like, stop playing with me, and I cussed her out.
And you cursed her out, right? So, as I'm listening, now that's all knowledge that the student just gave me. Now, the way that I could operate with empathy is this. Obviously, the reason why you were cursed out the teacher at that particular time, you felt like things were not being done fair, right? Now, this is a question for you all. Raise your hand if you've ever felt like you experienced things being done unfair with a teacher. Okay, so you see most of the people in the room. So even though I don't agree with you for cursing out a teacher, I can still empathize. So I'll wait. If you can hear me clap once, if you can hear me clap twice. Now, so what if I communicate with her in this way? So, young lady, there are times in my life where I felt like things didn't go fair. So I can understand and I can empathize with what you experienced. Would you mind if I share with you a way that you could have responded so that you didn't get in trouble? Would you be open to listening to that? So that's the way that I can respond with empathy. Thanks. So once again, ultimately we want to get to a space of empathy. Now that we have this mindset, the direction we want to go to in next is, I want to hear from you all. Why do you all think language is important? Why are the words that we say out of our mouth? And I want to get some new volunteers here as well. Why do we think that the words that we say, why is language important? We're going to go with this brother right here. Wait for the mic to come.
You know, like when you're around adults, you gotta watch your language.
Okay,
Like,
why?
when you say like you young and you're not supposed to be cursing, and then it's an elder in front of you, like, you're not supposed to be cursing. So
Okay.
That's why it's important to watch your language.
So it's important to watch your language because you may be communicating in a way that you probably shouldn't. You, talk to me.
Because it helps understand someone's feelings.
Okay, so language can help understand someone's feelings, right? Okay, got it. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, for sure. And just give them a break, just for a moment. Just for a moment. Yeah, just for a moment. You come back when you're ready. Come back when you're ready. We'll be back. We'll still be here when you all are ready to engage. All right, let's go ahead and send to the space. If you can hear me clap once, if you can hear me clap twice. Now, I want to say this in real time. I want to say this in real time. If you can't control yourself, you're a danger to yourself as well as others. There's absolutely times to have fun and joke and laugh, and there's appropriate times for that. But if you consistently and continuously operate in that way in inappropriate times, it's probably going to lead to a lack of success, right? So I want to make sure that no one gets distracted because the information that I'm giving is information that I typically give to C-level executives. I've done this in federal agencies. This is high-level information, and I know for a fact, if you should choose to use it, especially this next information, you can be used to control and improve your lives. So let's talk about it. Let's put our maturity on, and let's talk about it from a space of critical thinking. So once again, talk to me. Why is language important? Why is language important? Right here.
Because basically, like, if you're just walking up to somebody and cursing them out, they'll think, like, well, obviously, they'll be like, oh, you're saying this in a rude way, stuff like that. And then, like, if you're saying it in a nice way, they'll try to talk to you.
Okay. So it can determine how a person engages with you. Right here. Hold on, wait one moment.
I think language is important because you might act like a thermometer, basically.
Language is important because you might act like a thermometer. The language that someone says may influence you and it may influence your behavior. Let's talk about why language is important. About 75, according to like archaeologists, about 75 million years ago, we developed our ability to have what's called complex language. Complex language is the ability to identify very specific things. Like if I'm in a village 75 million years ago, and there was a lion over the mountain, as opposed to grunting or drawing a picture of it, now I can talk about it. And now the more and more we develop complex language, it gives us the opportunity to have a lot more in-depth conversations, the type of conversation that we're able to have. So there's some good reasons, right? Great reasons for us to develop more complex language. But as a result of that, I want you all to raise your hand if you've ever had a conversation with someone and it seemed like y'all just couldn't get on the same page. Let me see. If you ever had a conversation and it seemed like you just couldn't get on the same page, right? Well, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a model. It's a model that absolutely works, that's going to allow you to have a conversation with anyone and help them along the process. Because language shapes what we believe, it shapes how we feel, it shapes what we do. Ultimately, language doesn't just describe what's happening, it decides what's happening. And not just the language of what you say to someone or what someone says to you. There's another type of language. There's language that we say in our head every day. The conversations that we say. Why am I always getting in trouble? Why aren't I as pretty as the next person? Right? Why doesn't that teacher like me? Why does my mother always look frustrated whenever I walk into the room? These are all conversations and words that we often say, and based upon the words that we say to ourselves, it impacts, ultimately, what's happening to us. So what I want to share with you all, language shapes your perceptions, it shapes your emotions, it shapes your decisions. So if your perception is unclear, emotions will ultimately rise. So let me walk you all through the 3 things that I listen for whenever I'm having a conversation with someone. I listen for 3 things. The first thing I listen for is assumptions. Let me get a volunteer. What do you all think assumptions mean? What's an assumption? I'm going to go here. What is an assumption?
Assumption is like when it's a rumor and you just go based off it and go around telling everybody, no, it's not true.
You give great answers. So an assumption is when we fill in meaning without checking the facts. Exactly what you said, right? We see something and we fill in a meaning for it without actually checking the facts, right? The next thing that I listen for is what's called exaggerations. What's an exaggeration? In the blue, right here. What's an exaggeration? Wait for the mic. What does it mean to exaggerate?
Like you're doing too much.
Okay. It means it could be you're doing too much. Right here.
Like you're overreacting about something or someone.
An overreact. Actually, I may actually have to use that one. So an exaggeration is when we over-apply an idea, right? I like that language of overreacting. So when I'm listening to a person have a conversation with me, I'm listening for assumptions, and then I'm listening for exaggerations as well. The next thing I listen for is omissions. Omissions is missing information that leaves people guessing. Sometimes we're having conversations with our friends and they're saying things like, she don't like me, but we don't know specifically who it is and what their thoughts are behind it, right? So once again, I'm listening for 3 different things. I'm listening for assumptions, I'm listening for exaggerations, and I'm listening for omissions. Now what I want to do at this point, I want to share with you all a quick poem. And what I want you all to do is while I'm saying the poem, I want you all to listen for assumptions. I want you to listen for exaggerations. Okay. So let's go ahead and reset. I'm going to say this poem, and I want you all to listen closely. I want you to listen for assumptions. I want you to listen for exaggerations. And I want you to listen for omissions. All right, let's get it going. Teachers never listen, and students always talk. And third grade boys only run, never walk. And fathers tell their boys that men never cry. So when Johnny slipped and fell, he held it inside with pride. I heard a teacher say, these children are all disrespectful. So she's tired when she walks into the classroom all regretful. There was this new student with an attitude who treated everybody rude whenever she's in the mood. She said her mother was successful, but it was stressful, because all she cares about is her dress code. And I ain't special to no one, not even my friends, because I don't have what they have. So in the end, I can't talk to anyone, and I have to fight. They see me as wrong anyway, my path ain't right. I was talking to a young king who said something like, if I don't have money, then I'm nothing. So he hopped off the porch. The School of Hard Knocks took a course. Why do you think he did that? I'm looking for the source. A young queen said something, and I swear she wrong. She said that she won't be cute until her hair gets long. And she never gives effort, and her teacher said focus. She said when she does, the teacher never noticed. But I saw that same teacher spend countless of hours seeking ways to reach the student who needed extra time, so she let him have a little bit of space instead of reaching. So there's a lot to the story. Different age, different people, and I'm just wondering, how can we get on the same page? Thank you. Now, my question for you all, what were the assumptions that you heard? What were the exaggerations and what were the omissions? Talk to me. What were some of the assumptions that you all heard in the poem? Okay.
Some of the assumptions I heard was like how in the beginning you said it was like a new girl and she like gave everyone attitude, and like some people probably thought she was like rude or like a bully or something.
Okay, so some people thought she had an attitude. They thought she had an attitude and they thought she was rude or just a bully. And it's possible that that wasn't the case. What other things did we hear that would have been an assumption, maybe an exaggeration, maybe an omission? Right here.
I heard at the end it was like how the girl thought her teacher didn't notice her.
So why was that? Talk to me. Why do you classify it that way? Talk to me.
What do you mean?
Well, you said there was an assumption that they assumed the teacher didn't notice her? Why was that an assumption?
Because the teacher was telling her like how she wouldn't notice her until her hair get long, something like that.
Okay, I like it. I do have a couple teachers in the room real quick. Let me get some feedback from a teacher. Has there ever been a time where a student raised their hand and you noticed them but you did not call on them? Talk to me. Why did that happen?
Yeah, depending on what we're doing, sometimes like in class, like if it's a time where we're not supposed to be talking, sometimes I ignore it, but in reality I'm trying to get through stuff, and then when it's time to do questions, that's when I'm looking for hands or I start calling on you.
Okay. So sometimes a teacher will make a decision based upon a particular time in the class where that may not be the most appropriate time, right? I've been a teacher before, and there were times when students raise their hands, and I may feel like this student already knows the answer, but maybe I need to talk to another student who I may need to bring out some of their confidence, and this student may already be confident, right? So there's a lot of different reasons why teachers do what they do. Right here, talk to me. You have a question? Hold on, right there. Now, what's your question?
You was a teacher?
Yes, I was a teacher before. I was also an administrator. I was the assistant director of alternative high school. So I've been in education for quite some time. And then I took those experiences that I learned inside of the classroom, and I felt like I had some skills that I felt like other people would need, other teachers as well. So I started doing similar things that I'm doing now. I do a lot of trainings for teachers. I do a lot of trainings for superintendents, for districts. And I love doing that work because I think it's important to bridge the gap between you all as well as teachers, right? So I started off as a teacher, absolutely, right? So we talk about assumptions, exaggerations, and omissions. Now, I want us to get into language that you're going to absolutely listen for that's going to let you know when you're hearing an assumption, an exaggeration, or an omission. So it's going to allow us to question assumptions. We're going to ask questions. It's going to allow us to correct assumptions. We're going to challenge some of these exaggerations. we're going to recover some of the omissions. So when you're having your conversations with your friends, when you're having conversations with teachers, if they're exaggerating, you're going to be able to challenge those exaggerations appropriately simply by asking a question. You're going to be able to correct some of those assumptions. You're going to be able to recover some of those omissions. So let's talk about it. Assumptions. These are things to listen for. Mind reading. Mind reading is acting like you know what someone is thinking. And an example of that is like, you don't like me. Raise your hand if someone's ever said that before. She don't like me. That's an example of a mind read. Why is it a mind read? It's a mind read because you don't know what a person is thinking internally, right? They're assuming that that person doesn't like me, right? So listen for that type of language. The next thing I listen for was called an emotional turnover. Is anyone in here play basketball or football? Let's go to this person right here. What's your name again, brother? Caden. Caden. So you're what position do you play? You're you.
Point guard.
Point guard. I love it. So when you have the ball, what is your intention as a point guard?
They shoot the ball.
Okay, to shoot the ball and score the point, right? So what do you call it when you end up losing the ball and someone else on the opposite team gets it? What do you call it?
Fumble.
Okay, and fumble, and that's
Wait,
in
steal.
football.
Steal.
Okay, that's what they're doing. They're stealing it. But it's called a turnover, right? So we call it a turnover because you're giving someone else possession of what you should have, right? When I'm having conversations with students, when I'm having conversations with anyone, I listen to what we call an emotional turnover. An emotional turnover is giving someone else control of my feelings. So if I say, those students who are sitting here made me frustrated, right? That would be giving them power over my emotions. If I was a teacher and I said, that student frustrated me, that would be giving them power. If you say, they made me mad, no one else outside of yourself should be able to control your emotions. So when you're doing that, or when your friend is saying that, you want to identify that that's called an emotional turnover. You've turned over your emotions and given someone else the power. The next thing I listen for was called a meaning jump. A meaning jump is deciding what something else means without checking in. For example, there are students in the room right now who have not volunteered, right? Who have not volunteered. Should I assume, would it be correct to say that they're not listening? Would that be correct? No, right? Because some people can listen and may not necessarily be comfortable raising their hand. But if I was meaning jumping, I would assign what I saw and give it a definition. Those are some of the things that often happen as educators, and it also happens a lot with our friends. So when you're listening for conversations, listen to when someone's meaning jumping, listen for emotional turnovers, and listen for a mind read. So the next thing we're looking at is exaggerations. What words am I listening for when I'm listening for an exaggeration? The first thing I'm listening for is what we call all or nothing language. Words like all, every, never, everyone, no one. She never listens to me, right? That's an example of an all or nothing language. So if your friend says something to you like, none of them like me, why would that be all or nothing language? Talk to me. Why would that be considered all or nothing language? No one likes me. Because it's including everyone, right? And if I feel like everyone doesn't like me, you think that'll make me more sad? I'd be kind of frustrated, right? So, but often that's not true. It's not true that no one likes me. But when you allow yourself to say those words, or you allow your friends to say that to you, and you don't correct that assumption or that exaggeration, then they end up feeling a lot worse. So you're listening for all or nothing language. The next thing you're listening for is choiceless language. As in, when a person says, I should, I shouldn't, I must not, I have to, right? As in, I have to take care of her. Remember in the poem when I said, so I have to fight? Remember that? Yes or yes? Yeah. So when a person uses choiceless language, what you want to do is ask them a question that breaks up that language. So if I say I have to fight, one of the things I immediately would say is, what would happen if you didn't? What would happen if you didn't fight? Because it gets that person to start thinking a little bit beyond their own internal thoughts, right? The next thing I listen for is omissions. Omissions is vague verbs. A type of omission is what we call a vague verb. An action is mentioned, but the action is not explained. As an example, he rejected me. Let me hear from you all. In the sentence, he rejected me, what's the verb? Talk to me. What's the verb? Say it. What's the verb in he rejected me? What's the verb? So the verb is rejected. What makes that verb vague? What makes that verb vague? What makes it unclear? Right here in the back. They did not say how they were rejected, right? So sometimes a person may say, I was rejected, and what they were mentioning wasn't even necessarily rejected. I may say, so how did that person reject you? And they may say, well, they didn't call back, right? Raise your hand if sometimes you've not called someone back. Did that necessarily mean you rejected them, yes or no? No, right? So when I'm listening for vague verbs, when they give meaning to something that it doesn't have to mean, now we have to clarify that. The next thing I listen for is simple omissions. It's when information is left out. An example of that is, I'm uncomfortable. Uncomfortable about what? So as you all have conversations with your friends, they don't listen. Who is they? She's better. Better compared to who? So as opposed to when you're talking to your friends or you're having these conversations, as opposed to you telling them what to do, you can simply ask questions. When they're assuming something, when you're asking questions, you can just clarify those questions. So once again, the clarity model helps you notice what's really happening. It helps you see other perspective. It helps you respond instead of react. It helps you create better options, and it helps you to solve a problem faster. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all a worksheet to take with you, and I'm going to talk to your teachers about giving you all extra credit. Extra credit in your class for being able to evaluate and look at what an assumption is, an omission, in order to do what's called the Clarity Seekers model. So before we end today, I want you all to stand up. Try to stand up. The most powerful thing that you can do is take advantage of information. There have been times in my life where I've not had money, but I'm never poor. Poor means to pass over opportunities regularly. Don't miss out on this opportunity to understand language. And we're going to make a commitment today. So because when emotions rise, I want you all to go inward and get clear. And then move forward using clarity. Instead of assuming, you're going to ask. Instead of accusing, you're going to clarify. Instead of speeding up, you're going to slow down. And you're going to listen until the pattern reveals itself. I want you all to repeat after me. When emotions arise, I will regulate myself, inwardly, and use clarity, outwardly. This is a huge opportunity from you all today. It's been great speaking with you all today. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Did great, bro.
Appreciate you.